terrifying true story, real student horror. Part 1, The Middle School Lockdown. My name's Alex, and back when I was 12, Thomas Middle School was my whole world, a chaotic sprawl of concrete hallways and chipped lockers that smelled faintly of gym socks and pizza grease. The lunchroom was the loudest place on earth, a cavernous space where trays clattered and kids shouted over each other like it was a competition. I'd sit at a wobbly table near the windows with Eric and Brandy, my best friends since we'd bonded over dodgeball in 5th grade. That October day, the sky outside was heavy, bruised with clouds that promised rain. A damp chill seeped through the glass, making me tug my hoodie tighter as I poked at a soggy tater tot. Eric was reenacting some cartoon fight scene, flailing his arms, while Brandy rolled her eyes, her braids swinging as she laughed. I grinned, half listening, my mind drifting to the weekend. It felt like any other day, until it wasn't. The first boom came like a punch, a deep thud that rattled the air. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth, thinking it was thunder rolling in from the storm. But then another boom hit, and another, 4 in all, sharp and wrong. The lunchroom exploded into chaos, kids screamed, high-pitched and jagged, their voices tangling into a wave of panic. I looked at Eric, his wide eyes mirroring mine, and Brandy grabbed my sleeve, her nails digging in. "What was that?" she hissed, her usual smirk gone. I shook my head, my heart thudding against my ribs. Before I could guess, campus security guards burst through the double doors, their radios crackling like angry static. "Move! Multipurpose room, now," one bellowed, his voice cutting through the noise. My stomach twisted, something was happening, something bad. The crowd surged, a messy stampede of sneakers squeaking on linoleum. Kids in the lunch line groaned as guards waved them away, trays of half-bought pizza and milk cartons abandoned in heaps. I clung to Eric's backpack, Brandy right behind me, her breath shaky. "This better not be some stupid drill," Eric muttered, but his voice wobbled, betraying him. We pushed through the bottleneck at the lunchroom exit, the air thick with the sour tang of spilled juice and fear. Outside, rain pattered against the windows, smearing the world into gray streaks. The hallway to the multipurpose room stretched endlessly, its fluorescent lights flickering like they knew something we didn't. I kept my eyes on the guard's stiff shoulders, trying to ignore the way my legs felt like jelly. The multipurpose room swallowed us whole, a massive space usually reserved for assemblies or dodgeball tournaments. Its high ceiling echoed with the clamor of hundreds of kids, their whispers buzzing like trapped bees. The back wall, a giant sheet of glass, showed the rainy courtyard beyond, but guards were already yanking heavy maroon curtains across it, the metal rings screeching on their rods. I nudged Eric toward a corner, away from the crush of bodies, and Brandy followed, her arms crossed tight like she was holding herself together. Adults stood at every exit, 2 guards by the main doors, a janitor near the stage, even a secretary I recognized from the front office, her face pale as chalk. "Why's everyone so freaked?" I whispered, scanning their tense postures. Eric shrugged, but his knuckles were white around his backpack straps. We sank to the cold floor, the tiles gritty under my jeans. Around us, kids clustered in nervous knots, some giggling to hide their fear, others staring blankly like they'd checked out. I pulled my knees up, trying to make sense of it all. The booms replayed in my head, too sharp for thunder, too close for comfort. Brandy leaned in, her voice low. "You think it's a shooter or something?" Her eyes darted to the covered windows, and I swallowed hard, hating how real that sounded. "Nah," I said, forcing a laugh that felt like sandpaper. "Probably just, I dunno, a car backfiring." But my words fell flat, and Eric snorted, unconvinced. The truth was, none of us knew, and that not knowing clawed at me worse than anything. Eric, never one to sit still, started fidgeting with a loose thread on his sneaker. "I'm gonna find out what's up," he declared, his chin jutting out like he was daring the world to stop him. Before I could argue, he was on his feet, weaving through the crowd toward a guard by the stage. I watched him go, my pulse racing, Eric was fearless, but sometimes that made him reckless. Brandy grabbed my hand, her palm clammy. "He's gonna get us in trouble," she muttered, but there was a flicker of admiration in her voice. I nodded, torn between wanting answers and wanting him to just stay put. The room felt smaller now, the air heavy with too many breaths, too many questions. Eric came back faster than I expected, his face drained of color. He dropped beside us, his usual swagger gone. "Okay, so," he hesitated, glancing around like he was afraid someone would overhear. I leaned closer, my throat tight. "Spill it," Brandy said, her voice sharp but shaky. Eric licked his lips, then spoke in a rush. "There's this guy, right? Lives in those houses across from school. He's messed up, like, mentally disabled or something. He's barricaded himself in his place, saying he'll kill himself if they evict him. And get this, he's threatening to shoot the cops, too." My jaw dropped, a cold weight settling in my chest. "That's not all," Eric added, his voice dropping lower. "He was outside earlier, watching kids. Like, staring in a creepy way." I stared at him, my mind spinning. The houses across from TMS were so close you could see their front yards from the school's fence, peeling paint, overgrown lawns, nothing special. But now I pictured a man there, his eyes locked on us like we were prey. "Watching us?" Brandy echoed, her voice small. Eric nodded grimly. "Yeah, and he's a registered sex offender." The words hit like a slap, stealing my breath. I thought of the booms again, wondering if they were gunshots, if he was already out there, closer than we knew. The room seemed to tilt, the chatter around us fading into a dull roar. I pressed my back against the wall, needing something solid to ground me. Brandy's eyes glistened, but she blinked hard, refusing to cry. "This is so messed up," she whispered, wrapping her arms around her knees. I wanted to say something to make it better, but my mouth was dry, my thoughts a jumble of fear and disbelief. Eric just stared at the floor, unusually quiet, like the weight of what he'd learned had finally sunk in. I forced myself to breathe, counting each inhale, 1, 2, 3, trying to keep the panic at bay. Outside, the rain drummed harder, a relentless tap-tap-tap that matched my heartbeat. I wondered if the guards knew more, if they were keeping us here because he was already inside, prowling the halls. The wait stretched on, endless and suffocating. Kids around us started to fidget, some whispering theories, a bomb, a prank, a fight gone wrong, but none of it felt right. I kept glancing at the curtains, half expecting to see a shadow move behind them. A girl nearby sobbed quietly, her friend rubbing her back, and I felt a pang of guilt for being glad it wasn't me crying. "How long are they gonna keep us here?" Brandy asked, her voice edged with frustration. I shrugged, my shoulders heavy. "Till they know it's safe, I guess." But safe felt like a lie, a word too fragile for whatever was happening out there. An hour crawled by, marked by the faint tick of a clock above the stage. My legs cramped, and I shifted, the floor's chill seeping into my bones. Eric started tossing a crumpled straw wrapper between his hands, his nervous energy back in full force. "This is stupid," he muttered. "If something's gonna happen, we're just sitting ducks." I shot him a look, "Don't say that," but part of me agreed. The multi-purpose room, with its locked doors and guarded exits, felt like a trap disguised as protection. I wondered what my parents were doing, if they'd heard anything, if they were scared for me. Finally, a guard's radio crackled, and he stepped forward, raising a hand for silence. The room hushed, every eye on him. "We're escorting you back to class," he said, his voice gruff but steady. "One group at a time. Stay quiet, follow orders." A murmur rippled through the crowd, relief, but laced with unease. I stood, my knees wobbly, and helped Brandy up. Eric was already on his feet, scanning the exits like he was plotting an escape. "Guess it's over," I said, but the words felt hollow. We shuffled into line, flanked by guards who moved like they were still on edge. The hallway outside was eerily quiet, the rain's patter the only sound as we trudged back to class. In homeroom, our teacher, Ms. Carter, tried to act normal, handing out worksheets like nothing had happened. But her hands shook, and she kept glancing at the door, which stayed locked. I sat by the window, staring at the rain-slicked courtyard, wondering where that man was now. Brandy passed me a note, "You okay?" and I nodded, but I wasn't. Eric slouched in his seat, doodling angrily in his notebook, his usual bravado nowhere in sight. The bell rang eventually, but it didn't feel like freedom. I grabbed my backpack, my movements slow, like I was underwater. That night, Brandy called me, her voice urgent. "You remember last Halloween?" she asked. I frowned, thinking of costumes and candy. "Yeah, why?" She took a breath, then told me about the man, the same one, she was sure. She lived across from TMS, close enough to see his house from her porch. Last October, she'd seen him at his window, his silhouette stark against the glow of a single bulb. He was cutting his arm, blood dripping as he smeared it on the glass, writing "Don't come here or I'll kill you." Kids had laughed, thinking it was a spooky prank, and Brandy had too, snapping a blurry photo before moving on. But now, after today, she knew it wasn't a joke. "He's mental, Alex," she said, her voice trembling. "What if he'd gotten in?" I lay awake that night, the rain still falling, its rhythm now a taunt. My room felt too small, the shadows too deep. I kept seeing that house across from school, imagining him there, watching. The booms echoed in my mind, each one a question I couldn't answer. Was he still out there? Would he come back? I pulled my blanket tighter, but it didn't help. Middle school was supposed to be about dumb crushes and math tests, not this fear that clung like damp clothes, heavy and cold. I didn't know it then, but that day was only the beginning, the first crack in a world I'd thought was safe. Part 2, Transition to High School. Westview High loomed like a fortress, its red brick walls and narrow windows a stark contrast to the open sprawl of Thomas Middle School. I was 14 now, a freshman with a backpack too heavy and a heart still bruised from that rainy October day 2 years ago. The hallways buzzed with a different kind of chaos, seniors shoving past, locker doors slamming, the air thick with cheap cologne and nervous laughter. I navigated it like a sailor charting unfamiliar waters, my sneakers scuffing the polished floor. Everything felt bigger, louder, like the world had turned up its volume overnight. Yet beneath my forced smile, a quiet unease simmered, a residue of fear that made every sudden sound, a dropped book, a shout, feel like a warning. I wasn't alone in this new maze, thank God. Sarah and Mike, my anchors, had landed in most of my classes, a small mercy in a sea of strangers. Sarah was all sharp wit and restless energy, her dark curls bouncing as she scribbled notes or cracked jokes to hide her nerves. Mike was steadier, his lanky frame slouched but his hazel eyes always scanning, like he was solving a puzzle no one else saw. We'd met during orientation, bonded over a shared hatred of icebreaker games, and now they were my shield against the overwhelming tide of high school. That first week, as we sprawled on the courtyard grass during lunch, Sarah tossed a grape at me, grinning. "You look like you're waiting for a bomb to drop, Alex. Chill." I caught the grape, forcing a laugh, but her words stung because they were half true. The truth was, I couldn't shake the echo of those booms from middle school. They'd carved a groove in my mind, a place where fear waited to pounce. I'd lie awake sometimes, replaying the multi-purpose room's suffocating silence, wondering what might have happened if that man had gotten inside. It made me jumpy. When a teacher slammed a door, my pulse spiked. When a fire alarm blared, my hands shook. I didn't tell Sarah or Mike about it, not wanting to sound fragile. Instead, I buried it, focusing on surviving algebra and dodging the cafeteria's mystery meat. But the fear was a shadow, trailing me like a stray dog I couldn't shoo away. Westview wasn't just a school, it was a patchwork of quirks and characters that slowly became home. The library smelled of old paper and dust, its shelves a refuge where I'd hide with a sci-fi novel when the noise got too much. The gym echoed with squeaking sneakers and Coach Riley's whistle, a sound that could pierce concrete. My favorite place, though, was the computer lab, tucked in a corner of the second floor. Its humming machines and flickering monitors felt like a secret world, one where I could control something. I signed up for Mr. Johnson's intro to coding class on a whim, drawn to the idea of bending logic to my will. The first time I made a simple program print, "Hello, Alex," on the screen, my chest swelled, a flicker of power in a life that often felt unsteady. Mr. Johnson was a revelation, a lanky man with wire-rimmed glasses and a grin that said he knew more than he let on. He'd pace the lab, tossing out riddles about algorithms like they were candy, challenging us to think deeper. "Code's like life," he'd say, leaning against a desk. "Messy till you find the pattern." I soaked it up, my fingers flying over the keyboard, each line of code a tiny rebellion against chaos. Ms. Lee, who taught advanced programming, was stricter, her voice crisp as she drilled us on syntax, but her rare nods of approval felt like medals. Then there was Mr. Buckley, the network admin, who dropped by with stories of server crashes and hacker battles, his laugh booming like a drum. They saw something in me, a spark I didn't know I had, and their belief made me want to prove them right. Coding became my sanctuary, a place where the world made sense. When I debugged a stubborn loop, my mind quieted, the old fears fading to a hum. I'd stay late in the lab, the room glowing blue under fluorescent lights, while Sarah teased me for being a nerd and Mike sketched circuit diagrams in his notebook. "You're gonna build a robot overlord someday," Sarah said once, sprawled across a chair, her sneakers tapping the desk. I smirked, typing faster. "Only if it does my homework first." Mike chuckled, glancing up. "Careful, Alex. Robots don't like being bossed." Their banter grounded me, a tether to a normal I craved. But deep down, I wondered if I loved coding because it let me build walls no one could barge through, not even a man with a gun. Sarah had her own battles, though she hid them well. I'd catch her staring out windows, her fingers twisting a bracelet her mom gave her before she'd left for a job across the country. "It's fine," she'd say when I asked, her smile too bright. "Just miss her cooking, you know." But her eyes told a different story, one of loneliness she didn't voice. I wanted to push, to tell her she could talk to me, but I held back, afraid of breaking the fragile trust we'd built. Instead, I'd nudge her with a joke or pass her my chips, small offerings to say I was there. My own silence about middle school made me hesitate. How could I ask her to open up when I kept my own ghosts locked tight? Mike, on the other hand, was an enigma wrapped in calm. He'd listen to Sarah and me ramble, nodding thoughtfully, but when he spoke, it was deliberate, like he'd weighed every word. Once, as we walked home through the park, leaves crunching underfoot, he admitted he wanted to design security systems someday. "After all the school shootings you hear about," he said, his voice low, "I want to make places safe." His words hit me hard, stirring memories I tried to bury. I nodded, muttering, "Yeah, that'd be cool," but inside, I marveled at his clarity. Mike wasn't running from fear, he was building against it. It made me admire him, and maybe envy him a little, for having a plan while I was still groping in the dark. High school wasn't all deep thoughts and coding marathons. There were moments of pure, stupid joy, Sarah dragging us to a pep rally where we cheered until our throats ached, Mike teaching me to skateboard in the empty lot behind the school, only for me to crash spectacularly into a bush. We'd laugh until we couldn't breathe, the kind of laughter that felt like defiance, like we were stealing happiness from a world that didn't always give it freely. Those days, sprawled on the bleachers or sneaking snacks in study hall, made me believe I could outrun the past. I'd catch myself smiling, really smiling, and think maybe I was okay, maybe the shadow was gone. But it wasn't, not entirely. In quiet moments, waiting for the bus as dusk painted the sky purple, or staring at my bedroom ceiling while crickets sang outside, I'd feel it creep back. A tightness in my chest, a whisper asking what if. What if another lockdown came? What if next time, there was no escape? I'd shove it down, turning up my music or diving into code, but it was there, a crack in my foundation. I didn't tell Sarah or Mike, didn't want them to see me as the kid who flinched at loud noises. They had their own worries, and I wanted to be their rock, not their burden. The computer lab became my fortress, its hum a lullaby. I'd lose hours there, crafting programs that felt like spells, commands to make the world bend my way. Mr. Johnson noticed, pulling me aside one day as the bell rang. "You've got a knack, Alex," he said, his eyes crinkling. "Don't let it go to waste." His words lit something in me, a hunger to create, to matter. Ms. Lee started giving me extra projects, tricky algorithms that made my brain ache but left me buzzing with pride. Even Mr. Buckley, usually distracted by server woes, would ruffle my hair and say, "Kid, you're gonna run this place someday." Their faith was a lifeline, pulling me toward a future I could almost see. Sarah and Mike were part of that future, too. We'd plan our grand escape from homework over greasy diner fries, dreaming of colleges and cities far from Westview's sleepy streets. "I'm gonna be a journalist," Sarah declared one night, her fork waving like a baton. "Expose all the world's secrets." Mike raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Hope you're ready for hate mail." I laughed, but I saw the fire in her eyes, the need to dig for truth. I wanted that kind of certainty, but all I had was a love for code and a vague hope it'd lead somewhere. "What about you, Alex?" Sarah asked, nudging me. I shrugged, my mouth full. "Dunno. Build something cool, maybe." It sounded lame, but they didn't push, and that was enough. Looking back, I think Westview was where I started to grow, not just up but into myself. The school's quirks, its creaky stairs, the mural of a tiger someone had graffitied with glasses, the way sunlight slanted through the lab's dusty blinds, wove into my bones. Sarah and Mike were my compass, guiding me through the noise. Coding was my map, a way to chart the unknown. I didn't know then that Westview would pull me back years later, that its halls would hold more than memories. For now, I was just a freshman, finding my footing, unaware of the storm waiting on the horizon, a storm that would test me in ways I couldn't imagine. Part 3, The High School Lockdown. The calculus classroom at Westview High was a sanctuary of sorts, its walls plastered with faded graphs and a periodic table curling at the edges. I was 16 now, a junior, and Fridays carried a fizz of freedom, especially 7th period with spring break teasing just hours away. Sunlight slanted through dusty blinds, painting stripes on the scuffed linoleum, and the air hummed with the soft scratch of pencils and restless whispers. I sat near the back, my notebook open to a half-hearted sketch of a binary tree, my mind already wandering to beach plans with Sarah and Mike. Mr. Smith, our teacher, lounged at the front, his tie loosened like he'd given up on formality. He was the kind of guy who'd rather joke than lecture, and today he'd hijacked the projector for a Sporkle quiz, brand logos flashing on the screen. It felt light, easy, until it shattered. Mike leaned over, his voice a playful jab. "Bet you can't name that one, Alex." The logo was 3 stripes, bold and familiar. "Adidas," I shot back, smirking as Sarah rolled her eyes from the next row. Mr. Smith chuckled, clicking to the next question, when the loudspeaker crackled, slicing through our laughter like a blade. The dean's voice burst out, raw and jagged, not the usual monotone of announcements. "Teachers, this is not a drill. Lockdown, now." My breath caught, a cold prickle racing down my spine. The room froze, pencils hovered, eyes widened, and I saw Sarah's hand grip her desk, her knuckles pale. That voice, its panic, woke something old in me, a fear I thought I'd buried. My heart thudded, loud enough to drown the silence. Mr. Smith transformed in an instant, his easy grin gone, replaced by a taut urgency I'd never seen. He sprang to the door, locking it with a click that echoed like a gunshot in my mind. "Back corner, everyone, move," he hissed, his voice low but sharp, a conductor directing a grim symphony. I scrambled from my seat, my sneakers squeaking, and joined the huddle of classmates pouring toward the wall. Sarah grabbed my arm, her touch desperate, and Mike followed, his usual calm fraying as he glanced at the windows. We sank to the floor, knees bumping, the corner's shadow swallowing us. Mr. Smith flicked off the lights, plunging us into a dim haze, and I felt the weight of 20 pairs of eyes searching for answers none of us had. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of sweat and chalk dust. I pressed my back against the cool cinderblock wall, trying to anchor myself, but my mind raced. What was out there? A shooter? A bomb? The dean's words, not a drill, looped in my head, each repeat tightening the knot in my chest. I glanced at Sarah, her curls tucked behind her ears, her lips moving silently like she was praying or cursing. I wanted to reach for her hand, to say something brave, but my throat was dry, my courage a flicker smothered by memory. Mike sat rigid, his fingers tracing the seam of his jeans, a small, repetitive motion that betrayed his nerves. I wondered if he was thinking of his security system dreams, if he felt as helpless as I did to stop whatever was coming. A faint buzz from the room's electrical panel died abruptly, the silence that followed sharp and unnatural. The power was cut, deliberate, final. Sarah whispered, "This is bad, Alex. Really bad." Her voice trembled, and I saw tears glinting in her eyes, a crack in her usual armor. I nodded, my mouth too tight to speak. The darkness seemed to press closer, the classroom's familiar shapes, desks, posters, Mr. Smith's coffee mug, now alien and threatening. I thought of my coding, my neat lines of logic, and how useless they were here, where chaos ruled. My fingers curled into fists, nails biting my palms, a plea to feel something other than dread. I wanted to be the Alex who debugged impossible errors, not this trembling kid waiting for the worst. Minutes dragged, each one a lifetime. Then a scream tore through the hallway, a man's voice, raw and unhinged, shattering the quiet. "I'll kill you all," he roared, the words slamming into us like a fist. My body went cold, every muscle locking as the sound grew closer, a storm rolling toward our door. Two girls across from me, Jenny and Lila, started sobbing, their gasps loud in the hush, and their fear fed mine, a chain reaction I couldn't stop. Sarah's hand found mine, her grip bruising, and I squeezed back, needing her as much as she needed me. Mike's eyes darted to Mr. Smith, who crouched near us, his face a mask of focus, but I saw his hands shake as he shushed us. That tremble, from a man who'd always seemed unshakable, made the threat real. The man's screams turned to banging, metal lockers rattling under his fists, each clang a jolt to my heart. I pictured him out there, wild-eyed, maybe armed, his rage a force we couldn't reason with. My mind flashed to middle school, to another moment of hiding, but this was sharper, closer, the danger no longer across the street but here, steps away. I wondered who he was, what had broken him to scream like that. Was it anger? Madness? The banging grew louder, and Jenny stifled a whimper, her hands over her mouth. I wanted to tell her it'd be okay, but the lie stuck in my throat. Instead, I focused on Sarah's hand, her warmth a thin thread tethering me to hope. Then the banging hit our door, a thunderous pounding that shook the frame. "Open up," the man bellowed, his voice a snarl of fury. Lila screamed, a short, piercing cry that cut through the room, and I felt Sarah flinch, her breath hitching. The door rattled, each strike a hammer against my nerves, and I braced for it to give way, for him to burst in. My mind spun with what-ifs, what if I ran, what if I fought, what if this was it? I saw my parents' faces, my room's cluttered desk, the code I'd never finish. Mortality, a concept I'd only brushed in movies, stared me down, and I wasn't ready. Mike whispered, "Stay calm," more to himself than us, but his voice cracked, revealing the boy beneath his steady facade. Mr. Smith raised a finger to his lips, his eyes locked on the door, but I saw sweat bead on his forehead, a human frailty that made me ache for him. He wasn't just our teacher now, he was one of us, trapped in this moment, gambling on silence to save us. The pounding intensified, the man's shout slurring into a manic chant, and I wondered what he saw when he looked at our door, enemies, ghosts, or nothing at all. Sarah's tears wet my hand, and I realized I was crying too, silent streams born of terror and helplessness. I wanted to be brave, to protect her, Mike, all of them, but bravery felt like a stranger I'd never met. My coding logic, my plans with friends, none of it mattered if that door gave way. Then, as suddenly as it began, the banging stopped. The man's screams faded, moving down the hall, a receding tide of rage. We sat frozen, afraid to trust the quiet, our breaths shallow in the dark. I counted seconds, 1, 2, 10, waiting for his return, but only silence answered. Jenny's sobs softened, and Lila hugged her knees, her face pale as moonlight. Sarah loosened her grip, but didn't let go, her eyes searching mine for reassurance I didn't have. Mike exhaled, a shaky sound, and I saw his shoulders slump, the weight of holding it together lifting just a fraction. Mr. Smith stayed crouched, his gaze still on the door, like a sentinel refusing to stand down. Time blurred, minutes stretching into an eternity of waiting. My legs cramped, the floor's chill seeping into my bones, but I didn't move, didn't dare. The classroom felt like a tomb, its shadows hiding both safety and threat. I thought of Sarah's journalism dreams, Mike's security systems, my own half-formed hopes. Would we get to chase them, or was this where our story stopped? The question gnawed at me, a quiet terror beneath the louder fear of the man. I glanced at my friends, their faces etched with the same unspoken dread, and felt a fierce need to keep them safe, to keep us whole. It was a new kind of resolve, fragile but real, born in the crucible of this moment. The loudspeaker crackled again, the dean's voice softer now, strained but controlled. Teachers, resume classes, but keep doors locked. No students leave, no exceptions. He explained, a man, unstable, had stormed the school, assaulted a front desk clerk, sending her fleeing in screams. They didn't know if he was armed, didn't know where he was now. No cameras, no real security, Westview was a sitting duck back then, its openness a vulnerability exposed. Staff had swept the halls, found nothing, but the uncertainty lingered like smoke. I listened, my pulse still racing, and realized the danger wasn't gone, just paused. Mr. Smith stood slowly, his movements heavy, and flicked on the lights, the sudden brightness jarring. We shuffled back to our desks, the room's normalcy a cruel mockery. My notebook lay open, my binary tree sketch untouched, but I couldn't focus. Sarah wiped her eyes, forcing a weak smile. Guess we're okay, she said, but her voice was thin, a hope she didn't believe. Mike nodded, his fingers still tracing his jeans, a habit I now saw as his anchor. For now, he muttered, and I felt the truth in those words, the fragility of our safety. Mr. Smith tried to restart the lesson, his chalk scratching equations, but his glances at the door betrayed him. I watched him, seeing not just a teacher but a man who'd faced the same terror we had, who'd chosen to stand between us and whatever was out there. Class ended, but the lockdown's shadow clung to us. We stayed in the room, doors locked, until the final bell. Sarah packed her bag slowly, her movements deliberate, like she was proving she could still function. You scared? She asked me, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. You. She bit her lip, nodding back, and in that shared admission, I felt closer to her than ever. Mike joined us, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He's gone, right? They'd tell us if he wasn't. But his eyes flicked to the hall, seeking confirmation we didn't have. I wanted to believe him, to trust the adults, but doubt gnawed at me, a lesson in how little control we had. Later, rumors swirled. A janitor found the man that night, asleep in a storage closet deep in the school's bowels, a .44 Magnum poking from his pocket. He woke, fled before police arrived, a ghost slipping through their net. No one knew if he was caught, if he'd return, and that not knowing was a wound that wouldn't close. I walked home with Sarah and Mike, the spring air warm but heavy, our steps slow. We're still here, Sarah said, kicking a pebble, her voice defiant. Mike nodded, but his silence spoke louder, a mind already building defenses. I looked at them, my friends, my family in all but name, and felt a fierce gratitude. We'd survived, together. That night, alone in my room, I stared at my computer, its screen dark. I didn't code, didn't move, just sat with the weight of what had happened. The man's screams echoed in my mind, a reminder that safety was a lie we told ourselves. I thought of Mr. Smith's trembling hands, Sarah's tears, Mike's quiet strength, and my own racing heart. We'd faced death, or its shadow, and come out the other side, but not unchanged. I felt older, not in years but in understanding. Life was fragile, and I wanted to hold it tight. Westview, with its quirks and dangers, was shaping me, and though I didn't know it then, it wasn't done with me yet. Part 4, College and Return to High School. The summer after junior year faded like a song I couldn't quite hum, leaving me on the cusp of adulthood, my diploma from Westview High still crisp in its folder. I was 18, a tangle of ambition and uncertainty, standing at the edge of a new chapter. College beckoned, a sprawling campus 3 hours away, all ivy-clad buildings and lecture halls that smelled of coffee and possibility. I packed my life into boxes, my computer nestled carefully among hoodies and notebooks, its keys worn from years of coding dreams. Leaving Sarah and Mike felt like losing a limb. They'd been my constants, their laughter my compass through Westview's storms. We'd hugged fiercely at graduation, promising texts and visits, but the distance already tugged at me, a quiet ache as I drove away, the town's familiar streets shrinking in my rearview mirror. College was a whirlwind, a kaleidoscope of late-night study sessions and strangers who became friends. My dorm room was a shoebox, its walls thin enough to hear my neighbors' snores, but I made it mine with a string of fairy lights and a poster of a circuit board, a nod to the logic I craved. Computer science classes were my oxygen, professors dissected algorithms like poets, and I dove in, my fingers dancing over keyboards to craft programs that felt like tiny universes. Yet beneath the thrill, a shadow lingered, a residue of Westview's lockdown that tightened my chest at unexpected noises, a slammed door, a shout across the quad. I didn't talk about it, not to my roommate Lena, who hummed pop songs while studying, nor to my study group, who debated code over pizza. Instead, I channeled it, pouring my fear into projects aimed at safety, encryption tools, alert systems, hoping to build barriers no chaos could breach. Those years weren't just code and classes. I laughed until my sides ached at midnight diner runs, my sneakers sticking to greasy floors as Lena recounted her latest dating disaster. I wandered campus under starlit skies, the air crisp with autumn, feeling small but alive in the universe's vastness. Yet every triumph, a perfect exam score, a professor's praise, came with a whisper of doubt. Was I good enough? Could I outrun the helplessness I'd felt, hiding in that calculus classroom? I'd sit at my desk, the fairy lights casting soft glows, and stare at lines of code, searching for answers in their precision. My fingers would pause, hovering, as I wondered if I was chasing control because I'd once had none. It was a question I didn't voice, a crack in my confidence I patched with more work, more lines, more late nights. Graduation came fast, a blur of black gowns and cheers under a May sun. At 22, I was a computer science grad, my degree a ticket to anywhere, but Westview called me back, its pull magnetic. Mr. Johnson, Ms. Lee, and Mr. Buckley, my old computer teachers, had stayed in touch, their emails full of encouragement and bad tech puns. When they offered me a job as a computer intern at Westview High, I didn't hesitate. It wasn't just a paycheck, it was a chance to return to the place that shaped me, to give back to the teachers who'd seen my spark. I drove into town, the familiar diner and tiger mural greeting me like old friends, but my stomach knotted as I passed the school's red brick facade. Westview was home, but it was also a battlefield, its halls holding memories of screams I tried to forget. The job was a gem hidden in the school's underbelly, a basement office, sleek and modern amid the chaos of dusty boxes and tangled cables. 3 polished desks gleamed under fluorescent lights, flanked by 2 mini fridges humming softly, stocked with soda and snacks. A flat-screen TV hung on the wall, its remote buried under manuals, and air conditioning whispered a cool reprieve from the upper floor stuffiness. The servers, my real work, stood in a corner, their LEDs blinking like a heartbeat. I ran my hand over a desk, its wood smooth under my fingers, and felt a surge of pride. This was mine, a space to create. Yet as I unpacked my laptop, the basement's concrete walls seemed to close in, a reminder of hiding, of waiting for danger. I shook it off, forcing a smile, but the unease clung like damp fog. My coworkers, Dave and Gary, were tech veterans, their banter a mix of sarcasm and shop talk. Dave was wiry, his glasses slipping as he grumbled about outdated software, his fingers drumming a restless beat on his desk. Gary was broader, his laugh a rumble, but his eyes held a quiet weight, like he'd seen too many system crashes, human and machine. They welcomed me warmly, tossing me a soda and a spare chair, but I felt like a kid playing adult, my degree no match for their experience. "Don't touch the server configs yet, rookie," Dave teased, his grin softening the jab. I nodded, my laugh shaky, and dove into organizing cables, my hands moving to quiet my nerves. I wanted to prove myself, to be more than the scared teen they'd never met. Reconnecting with my teachers was like slipping into a favorite jacket, familiar, warm, but slightly different now. Mr. Johnson greeted me with a bear hug, his glasses fogging as he rambled about new lab upgrades. "You're one of us now, Alex," he said, his voice thick with pride, and I felt my chest swell, a kid again under his faith. Ms. Lee was cooler, her handshake firm, but her rare smile as we discussed network protocols was a victory I savored. Mr. Buckley, still a giant with a laugh like thunder, clapped my shoulder, nearly knocking me over. "Told you you'd run this place," he boomed, and I grinned, but his words stirred a pressure, to live up to their trust, to be the Alex they believed in. I didn't tell them how the basement's hum sometimes sounded like a distant scream, how I checked the exits instinctively. Work was a rhythm, patching servers, troubleshooting glitches, sipping cold soda as Dave and Gary swapped stories of tech disasters. The office's AC was a luxury, its chill a contrast to the upper floor's heat, and I'd linger there, my laptop glowing with diagnostics. Yet every task carried a shadow, configuring firewalls, I'd think of locking out threats, updating alerts, I'd imagine faster warnings for danger. My college projects hadn't faded, they'd grown, rooted in a need to protect. I'd pause, my cursor blinking, and wonder if I was fixing systems or myself, rebuilding the control I'd lost twice before. My fingers would tighten on the mouse, a silent vow to make things safer, even if I couldn't erase the past. Dave noticed my intensity, his drumming fingers stilling one day as he leaned back. "You always this serious, Alex?" His tone was light, but his eyes probed, like he saw the weight I carried. I shrugged, forcing a chuckle. "Just want to get it right." He nodded, but didn't push, and I was grateful. Gary, meanwhile, had a softer approach, leaving me coffee with a post-it note, "Good work, kid," his quiet support a balm. I wanted to open up, to tell them why I jumped at loud bangs, but the words stayed locked, too raw for this bright office. Instead, I'd nod back, my smile a shield, and dive deeper into code, each line a step toward proving I was enough. The school itself was a time capsule, its quirks unchanged, the creaky stairs, the tiger murals, graffiti glasses, the library's dusty scent. I'd wander the halls during breaks, my badge swinging, and feel like a ghost and a stranger all at once. Students rushed past, their laughter echoing, and I envied their obliviousness, their world unscarred by lockdowns. I'd pass Mr. Buckley's classroom, hearing his voice boom through the door, and smile, but my steps slowed near the calculus room, its door a portal to that junior year terror. I didn't enter, my hand hovering over the knob, my heart racing with memories I couldn't face. I'd turn away, my breath uneven, promising myself I'd go in another day. Sarah and Mike were distant now, their lives pulling them to other cities, Sarah chasing journalism in Chicago, Mike studying engineering in Boston. We texted, our group chat alive with memes and updates, but it wasn't the same. One night, on a grainy video call, Sarah's face glowed from her tiny apartment. "Miss you, nerd," she said, her voice catching, and I saw the loneliness she hid behind her grin. Mike, his hair longer, nodded. "Yeah, come visit, Alex. We'll crash a lab or something." I laughed, promising I would, but my throat tightened. I missed them fiercely, their absence a hole no job could fill. I didn't tell them Westview felt like a minefield, didn't want them worrying. My fingers twisted my badge's lanyard, a nervous tick, as I swore to keep our bond alive. The basement office became my haven, its order a contrast to the school's chaos. I'd sit at my desk, the TV muted on some tech channel, and lose myself in server logs, the data a puzzle I could solve. Yet the basement's flaws nagged me, no door on our office, just a wide opening, a main door with a lock so rusty it mocked the word security. I'd eye it sometimes, my pen tapping, imagining a better system, cameras, keycards, anything to feel safe. My college ideas resurfaced, sketches of alert apps filling my notebook, each one a rebellion against vulnerability. I didn't share them, not yet, my confidence wavering, but they burned in me, a fire I couldn't douse. Mr. Johnson caught me sketching once, his shadow falling over my desk. "What's this?" he asked, peering at my app design, his glasses glinting. I hesitated, my cheeks warm, then explained, "A system to ping staff during emergencies, faster than radios." He nodded slowly, his smile wide. "You're still dreaming big, Alex. Good." His words were a spark, reigniting my belief, but doubt lingered. What if it wasn't enough? I thanked him, my voice steady, but my hands shook as I tucked the notebook away, a mix of hope and fear I couldn't untangle. Ms. Lee, overhearing, added, "Build it, then test it. Ideas don't save lives, execution does." Her pragmatism grounded me, a challenge I wanted to meet. Mr. Buckley, meanwhile, was a whirlwind, bursting into the basement with server complaints or wild ideas for student projects. "You're my secret weapon, Alex," he'd say, winking, and I'd laugh, but his trust weighed heavy, I didn't want to let him down. Once, as we debugged a network glitch, he paused, his eyes distant. "This place gets under your skin, doesn't it?" His voice was soft, almost sad, and I wondered what he carried, what Westview had taken from him. I nodded, unable to speak, my fingers stalling on the keyboard. We worked in silence after, a shared understanding deeper than words, and I saw him not just as a mentor but as a man navigating his own ghosts. Life settled into a rhythm, work, walks through town, calls with Sarah and Mike, but the basement's hum never fully drowned the past. I'd catch myself checking my phone, expecting a lockdown alert, my pulse spiking at nothing. I wanted to be the Alex who'd coded through college, who'd earned this job, not the one who flinched at shadows. Yet each day at Westview was a step toward reclaiming myself, proving I could stand where I'd once cowered. I'd smile at Dave's jokes, nod at Gary's notes, and soak in my teacher's pride, each moment a brick in a new foundation. I didn't know then that the school had one more test for me, one more chance to face the fear I thought I'd outgrown. Part 5, The Gunman Lockdown. The basement office at Westview High was my refuge, its cool air and blinking servers a cocoon against the world's unpredictability. I was 22, a month into my internship, my desk cluttered with coffee mugs and code printouts, each a badge of belonging. That afternoon, I sat alone, the hum of the mini fridges my only company as Dave and Gary tackled paperwork upstairs. Sunlight didn't reach this concrete underworld, but the flat-screen TV flickered silently, casting blue shadows across the open doorway. I unwrapped a turkey sandwich, its bread soft under my fingers, and took a bite, savoring the quiet. My laptop glowed with a half-finished firewall patch, a puzzle I relished solving. Yet beneath my calm, a restless pulse beat, a whisper of vigilance honed by years of Westview's lessons. I didn't expect it to roar to life so soon. The phone rang, a shrill jolt that made me flinch, mayo smearing my thumb. I grabbed it, expecting Dave's voice, but a woman from the front office spoke, her words clipped and urgent. "Alex, lockdown. Someone's in the school, possibly armed. Stay put. My stomach plummeted, the sandwich forgotten as her words sank in. Not again. Not here. I hung up, my hand trembling, and lunged for the light switch, plunging the office into darkness. The server's LEDs pulsed like distant stars, and I killed my laptop screen, its glow a traitor now. My breath rasped, loud in the sudden hush, as I scanned the doorway, no lock, no barrier, just a yawning gap. The basement door upstairs was worse, its rusty latch a cruel joke. I was exposed, a rabbit in a burrow with no bolt hole. I sank to the floor behind my desk, my back against its wood, and clutched my phone, its cold glass a lifeline. I texted Dave and Gary, lockdown. You okay? My thumbs unsteady, but no reply came. The darkness pressed close, heavy with the scent of dust and metal, and I felt the old fear rise, sharp as a blade. It wasn't just the threat outside, it was the memory of hiding, middle school's booms, high school's screams, each a scar that throbbed now. I wanted to be the Alex who'd coded safety apps, who'd earned this job, but panic clawed at me, whispering I'd never outrun this. My fingers tightened around the phone, a silent plea to stay grounded, to not let fear win again. 20 minutes dragged by, each second a wait. I played a mindless phone game, the colors blurring as I strained to hear beyond the office, footsteps, shouts, anything. The silence was worse, a void that invited dread. I pictured the school above, students huddled, teachers guarding doors, and wondered if Mr. Johnson, Ms. Lee, or Mr. Buckley were out there, facing what I couldn't see. My chest ached for them, for the kids I'd passed in the halls, their laughter now silenced. I shifted, my sneakers scuffing the tile, and caught myself counting breaths. 1, 2, 3, a habit from years ago, a tether to control. But control was a lie down here, where danger could walk in uninvited. Then the basement door creaked, a slow, grating wail that froze my blood. Footsteps followed, heavy and rushed, thudding down the stairs like a storm breaking. My phone slipped to the desk, my hands clammy as I ducked lower, curling under the desk's overhang. The darkness swallowed me, but my heart hammered, loud enough to betray me. Someone entered the office, their presence a shift in the air, and I held my breath, every muscle taut. I pictured a shadow looming, a weapon gleaming, and wondered if this was how it ended, not in code or laughter, but in a corner I couldn't escape. My fingers dug into my palms, a desperate bid to stay real, to not dissolve into terror. Silence stretched, taut as a wire, then my phone dinged, a text, sharp and damning in the quiet. I bit my lip, tasting fear, as footsteps moved closer, deliberate now. My world shrank to that sound, each step a countdown. I couldn't stay hidden, couldn't let it end like this. With a gasp, I dove from under the desk, my knees scraping tile, and threw up my hands. Don't kill me. I begged, my voice raw, a plea stripped of pride. A figure stood before me, red plaid shirt, jeans, a reddish-black cap tilted low. He grabbed my arm, pulling me up, his grip firm but not cruel. It's okay, he said, his voice low, urgent. I'm hiding too. What's going on up there? My eyes darted to his face, shadowed but tense, and I froze, caught between relief and doubt. I stumbled back, my shoulder brushing the desk, and whispered, "Who are you?" My voice shook, a thread of suspicion weaving through my fear. He hesitated, then spoke fast. "Just a dad, picking up my kid. A teacher told me to hide." His words sounded plausible, but his eyes flicked to the doorway, restless, like a man with secrets. I nodded, my throat tight, and pointed vaguely. "Exits that way." My hand trembled, betraying my unease, as I grappled with trust. I wanted to believe him, to cling to a shred of normalcy, but Westview had taught me better. My fingers brushed my phone, a reflex to check for answers, and I glanced down, the screen's glow a beacon in the dark. Dave's text stared back, its words a gut punch, "Dude, it's crazy. Guy with a gun shot Mr. Buckley. Red shirt, hat. Don't come up. My breath stopped, my eyes snapping to the man, his plaid shirt now a warning, his cap a confirmation. My stomach churned, bile rising as I realized, he wasn't hiding, he was the threat. His gaze caught mine, narrowing, and I saw the shift, the moment he knew I knew. Panic surged, a wildfire in my veins, and I bolted, my sneakers slamming the floor as I lunged for the stairs. A gunshot cracked, deafening, the bullet ricocheting off a server with a metallic scream. I didn't look back, my legs burning, my mind blank but for one word, run. The stairs blurred under me, each step a gamble as my hand grazed the rail, slick with sweat. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of survival, and I burst through the basement door, the hallway's light blinding. Police swarmed, their radios crackling, and I staggered toward them, gasping, "He's down there." My voice broke, a mix of relief and dread, as they surged past, guns drawn. I sank against the wall, my knees buckling, the tile cold through my jeans. The gunshot's echo lingered, a ghost in my ears, and I realized I'd acted, not hidden, not frozen, but run, fought, lived. It was a shift, a crack in the fear that had chained me, and though my hands shook, I felt a spark of something new, courage, raw and unpolished. They caught him at the basement exit, his cap askew, his hands cuffed as he shouted nonsense about debts and grudges. I watched from the hall, my arms crossed tight, a shield against the chaos. The police said Mr. Buckley was hit, a shoulder wound, not fatal, thank God, but the news landed heavy, stirring guilt I couldn't name. I pictured his booming laugh, his trust in me, and wondered if I'd failed him by not seeing the man's lie sooner. My fingers twisted my badge, a nervous loop, as I grappled with the what-ifs. What if I'd stayed under the desk? What if the bullet had found me? But I'd moved, chosen, and that choice was a lifeline, a truth I clung to amidst the storm. Dave and Gary found me later, their faces pale but whole. Dave clapped my shoulder, his usual snark gone. "You okay, rookie?" His voice was soft, his eyes searching, and I saw worry he didn't voice. I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah. You." He shrugged, but his hand lingered, a rare warmth. Gary handed me a soda, his fingers brushing mine. "Hell of a day," he said, his rumble strained, and I saw the weight he carried, the fear of losing us all. I took the can, its chill grounding me, and managed a smile. Worst one yet. Their presence was a balm, a reminder I wasn't alone, and I leaned into it, my shoulders easing for the first time in hours. Mr. Buckley's room was quiet when I visited him days later, the hospital's antiseptic sting sharp in my nose. He lay propped up, his arm bandaged, but his grin was pure Buckley, wide and unyielding. "Heard you outran a bullet, kid," he said, his voice rough but warm. I laughed, shaky, and sat, my hands clasped to hide their tremble. "Barely." He leaned forward, his eyes serious. "You did good, Alex. Don't doubt it." His words hit deep, soothing a wound I hadn't named, and I saw his own struggle, pain, yes, but also a resolve to keep teaching, keep trusting. I nodded, my voice catching. "Glad you're okay, Mr. B." We talked for hours, about servers and life, and I left lighter, our bond stronger, a bridge rebuilt. The aftermath was a tangle, police reports, hushed rumors, a school on edge. They said the gunman, a student's father, had a feud with Mr. Buckley, something petty blown into madness, but the why didn't matter. Nothing justified this, not the bullet, not the fear. I returned to the basement, the office unchanged but heavier, its open doorway now a challenge I couldn't ignore. I sat at my desk, my fingers tracing the keyboard, and opened my safety app sketches. This time, I didn't hesitate, my code flowing with purpose, to warn, to protect, to ensure no one felt what I had. Each line was a defiance, a vow to reshape fear into strength, and I felt myself shift, not erasing the past but building beyond it. Sarah and Mike called that night, their voices a lifeline across miles. "You're insane, Alex," Sarah said, her laugh tearful, her relief palpable even through the phone. Mike was quieter, his words measured. "You're tougher than you think." I smiled, my eyes stinging, and told them about the run, the shot, the choice. They listened, their silences full of love, and I realized Westview hadn't just scarred me, it had forged me, through them, through Buckley, through every moment I'd chosen to keep going. I hung up, my room soft with moonlight, and felt a peace I hadn't known, a sense that I could carry this, all of it, and still stand tall. Westview didn't let go easily, its halls, its hum, its history were part of me, etched in my bones. I'd walk the basement stairs, the gunshots echo fainter now, and see not just fear but survival, my own and others. Dave's teasing, Gary's quiet nods, Buckley's grin, they were anchors, proof we'd endured. My app grew, line by line, a legacy I'd share with the school, a way to guard its heart. I wasn't fearless, never would be, but I was Alex, coder, survivor, friend, and that was enough. The world beyond Westview waited, vast and uncertain, but for now, I sat in the office's glow, my fingers typing, my story unfinished but unbroken.